joining.
Zoom lady.
Thanks everyone for joining. It's our pleasure today to welcome Apoorv from the company Fool. It's an e-commerce brand with social enterprising roots. And what they do is pretty incredible. So we're really excited to have you here today to learn about their work. They recycle flowers that usually would be thrown into the Ganga River in India, which is a sacred river. By doing so, they actually employ marginalized communities of women in India, so helping advance the employment and stable support of women who otherwise might be doing kind of demeaning activities and work and wouldn't have a stable employment, and also contributing to the reduction of the pesticides and toxic chemicals that usually are thrown into the Ganga River through temples and throwing these flowers in after they've been used. So it's just a really, really interesting story. So happy and grateful that you were able to take the time to be here today with us, and just really excited for everyone to learn more about your story.
Thank you, Rashina. Thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity.
Thank you. So I was thinking, just to get started, I know that last time when we had our conversation, you just shared the story of Fool and how it started, and I thought that was so inspirational. So it would be really interesting if you could share a little bit more detail about that for the people listening.
Yeah, so we are based out of Kanpur. Kanpur is a town which is situated on the banks of River Ganga, the longest river in the country, a lifeline to about 700 million people, directly, indirectly. Now, it is considered a sacred river in the country because of mythology and religious scriptures, etc. But if you were to actually come down to India and see the river, you would be shocked and aghast at the condition in which it is. And similar was the case with a friend of ours from the Czech Republic who was visiting us in Kanpur. And when we took him to the banks of the river Ganga, so by the banks there are temples, and they are typically called ghats. So we took him over there. We were sat by the ghats of the river Ganga, and he saw the color of the water and just the overall pollution. You don't really need to put a finger inside to understand that this water is not great. And he said that if you guys really consider this river sacred, is this how you keep it? Because he could also see people taking a dip in the water. So by Hindu rituals, it is considered that if you take a dip in the river Ganga, all your sins will be washed away, and so on and so forth. And Kuba said that, boss, I wouldn't even touch this water. Leave alone, take a dip or drink from it. And you guys are actually taking a dip. That's horrifying. And we were quite dismissal when we said that, it's not a one person job. What we do, industries leave their sludge, their industrial waste, etc., effluents in the water that contributes to the overall pollution levels. And that conversation just sort of veered off. At that moment, say in a while, we saw that a truck full of flowers were dumped in the river. So in India, when you offer flowers to the gods, they are considered sacred, and by tradition, you are not supposed to burn them or put them in a dustbin or a garbage bin. You are supposed to put them back into the water. And when we saw that one full truckload of flowers actually dumped in the water, that's when it sort of hit us that was, while we blame the industries for the pollution, this aspect of pollution we've never even thought of, or we've never even considered this as pollution. Because in just 15 minutes, we could see a slimy surface, oily layer form on top of those flowers. And that's when it hit us that floral waste also contributes heavily to the pollution in the river. That's how the conversation started as to what could we do to ensure that these flowers were not dumped in there. Could we do make upcycle it into something so that we could stop people from actually dumping these flowers. That's how Fool was born. And what we started off with about 2 kgs of flowers. Today, we upcycle more than 2.5 tons of flowers on a daily basis, and we upcycle them into consumer products such as incense sticks and incense cones. So that's our story. Yeah,
That's so interesting. And I really think that it's such an interesting story because it came so naturally. It wasn't you setting about saying, okay, I'm going to start a business. It's just very much the roots of entrepreneurship, trying to solve a problem. And in the process, then the second part of that being, who can we employ? How can we solve a social issue at the same time as solving this environmental problem? So I think that's, for me, what really strikes me about your story is that it comes from that place of trying to solve a problem and trying to create something that will improve your environment, and in this case something as sacred as the Ganga River. I personally have actually visited the Ganga River when I lived in India, and I was also struck by how it's actually very dirty. So it was it's interesting to learn of such an incredible brand doing something about that, and preserving something that's so special and integral to Indian culture. One of the things that I saw when I was going through your website and your products is just everything is so well executed. The packaging is beautiful. The social media presence that you have is incredible, and I know that you're the person who's in charge of that as well, who's in charge of all of the marketing activities. So it would be really interesting to learn, how did you go from that process of, okay, we want to solve a problem and do something positive in the world, and then actually how can we convert that into a business that makes money, that can support itself and its employees, and then create something consumer facing that is appealing to people who are buying online, who are looking to buy incense, for example. I'd love to hear more about that process.
yeah. Thank you, Rashina, first of all, for the compliments. So see, honestly, when we started off, we started off by employing two women, women who were, both of them were from the marginalized sections of the society, and they used to survive on daily wages. So what we started off what was that, we give them a fixed monthly salary along with typical employee benefits, similar to what a white collar employee would typically get. In the beginning, we didn't really have a very solid plan, but then as we started upcycling more and more waste and more women started joining us, that's when we realized that we want to keep doing this on our own terms. And we want to ensure that we keep enlarging the impact. Now, one way to do that we figured was to become an NGO, a non-for-profit, but then we'd always be reliant on grants and the largest of donors. The other would be to make sure that this business, we make it a for-profit organization and let the business take care of itself. So that was the thought process with which we sort of started. And when we thought of it that way, that, typically what triple bottom line impact talks about, that you place environment and people and profits at the core of your mission. So we figured that, if we could sort of keep profit as a mission also, or generating revenues as a mission also, then we would be able to impact a lot more places, a lot more women, etc. Now, having said that, incense as a product does not really sell online in India. It's an over-the-counter retail shop kind of a product. And we figured that we are a young brand with no supply chain similar to the big FMCG brands of the country. We said, how could we really differentiate ourselves from what is there in the market, from the people who have been doing it for almost 70, 80 years? The answer was that you have to build a very strong narrative. One, two, we had to make sure that the experience was fantastic. Just because we were doing social impact work does not mean that we give them a substandard experience.
Yeah.
I mean, because we were going to charge them money, they should be able to get that product better than what they would have gotten from a regular brand. Just because we were social impact, that should not be a reason for us to cut down on the experience part of it. And that's where we invested, I would say, our lot of time and effort in understanding packaging. To be honest, this packaging, we've done it in house. We ourselves, at that time, the business didn't require so much of our time. So we could really devote ourselves in building this. We burned our fingers with a bad packaging once. We realized how people actually don't buy it because of it. We decided to reinvent the entire bit. We figured that incense as a product in India has always been spoken of as a product for religious purposes. We decided to make it a lifestyle product.
Yeah.
So when you make something a lifestyle product, you need to even talk about it in that same tonality, etc. Only then would people really relate with it. Having said that, I think the vision of being able to generate revenue was one of the key reasons why we took these steps. And now that has become a pillar of our business, that the experience that Fool will give people has to be better than what is out there in the market. So that's one of the things that has really helped us.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask you, I know there's a little bit of a choppy reception. Would it maybe be worth trying without the earphones, or with maybe, I can see that you're holding the mic. Maybe if you don't hold that, that might be a little bit
Okay,
better.
1 second. I'll just probably shut down my video. Maybe must be a bandwidth issue.
Okay, we can try that way. Okay, let's try this way, and then if it doesn't improve, we can try something else.
Yeah. Is this better?
I think so. Let's continue along this way, and then if it doesn't get better, we can try and figure it out. But so far, so good. So yeah, what I think is really interesting about this as well is you going very intentionally along this path of, okay, let's make sure that we're mission driven, but that we also have as our mission to generate profit, and that you use that to then make strategic decisions like up leveling the kind of packaging, the experience of the brand, the way in which you speak to your target audience. I think some of the things that you've really shared are really valuable, and I think they maybe need to be emphasized a little bit more as well. So for example, thinking of it as a lifestyle brand and actually having already assessed the market well enough to understand that this product will sell best if it's seen through that lens of being a lifestyle product and spoken about by the brand as a lifestyle product. So I wonder, what was the research that went into that? How did you go about making those decisions and learning those lessons? And I would also love to hear more about, you said that you got your fingers burned. I'd love to hear more about what that looked like. So what are the things that you tried and learned from during that process of getting to where you are today? Because it's, when you look at the website and the product, it's beautiful. So it would be just really nice to get a behind the scenes on that as well.
Yeah, so really good line of questioning, Rashina. So we made our first packaging with seed paper because we knew that there was someone around us who was working with seed paper. We figured, it would be a great experience for people to actually not throw the packaging, utilize it, etc. Because of which the printing on seed paper is not very lively. The colors are a little faded. Of course, the product is great, but the printing, the experience is not the best. So we didn't really think about it that way. We figured that if we are giving this experience and if a person can actually plant the packaging itself, that would be so good. But then what we had failed to understand was that when a person is paying X or XYZ amount of money for a product, he or she needs to feel good about getting it in the hand when they actually receive the product. Since we sell online, it's about that unpacking experience. And that was one of the key insights that we got after actually speaking with a lot of people who bought the products organically. Apart from this, positioning it as a lifestyle brand, to be honest, there were two reasons for it. One, we did a basic consumer survey. We visited about 200 middle class and upper middle class households in and around Kanpur. And a few of us, we did it in Pune and Bombay as well. And we asked them their general perceptions about incense, because incense in India has been a product which has been around for centuries now. And we said, what is your perception about it? How do you use it? When do you use it? And by default, everyone told us that, I just use it in the evening when I say my prayers, or I use it in the morning when I probably get up, read a book or something of that sort. But again, it is driven by my need to ensure that these incenses are lit up before the temple or the home temple, etc. And it was a habit which was driven by the parents rather than the younger generation. So we figured that, what has happened here is that incense as a product has gone away from the mindset of the younger generation, one. Two, because they have always looked at it as a religious product. So instead of keeping the product as a product only for the temples, why don't we get the product in the living rooms or the bedrooms? And that's how the conversation of making it a lifestyle product started. So people use air fresheners for their halls. People use artificial fragrances to have that me time experience, etc. And we said, why not? Why can't incense do the same thing? So that's how though that conversation went on.
That's really incredible. And I just think that I know that you make it sound very kind of natural and easy, but I would like to emphasize for the people listening, this is just really incredible how in tune you are with your market, that you visited 200 people from different segments of the population, that you're even talking to the people who've already bought your product to understand what was their unboxing experience, how did they feel about the packaging, then learning from that. That represents kind of a series of mini decisions that I think not everyone would necessarily think of, but I think it's really interesting to see that that played a part in you getting then to the next phase of the business, where you had this idea of, okay, how are we going to present it to the market? What aligns with the people that are today our demographic? And also what's really interesting for me at least, is you started with this social initiative and you wanted to change lives, but you actually had to change the way that you presented it to people in order to do that. So not relying on the fact that it's social impact driven, but actually changing the narrative around the brand to then get to that point where it's commercially successful to then be able to change lives. So I think that's really, really interesting as a takeaway as well, because often we do tend to think, well, we're doing something amazing and it's sustainable and that's enough. But actually, no, the way that you systematically went about, okay, let's talk to the people, inform and educate them, talk about the brand differently, insert that idea in people's minds. Maybe it's for the bedroom, maybe it's for the living room. I think that's really, really interesting and very different as well.
Honestly, Rachana, apart from the first 200, 300 people, nobody would really care too much about your social impact efforts. In the sense, they would appreciate it and they would say, oh, wow, you're doing a great job. But that does not stay in their head. They wouldn't go back home and become advocates of the work that you're doing. And that's where we figured that the social impact that we are doing is because we want to do it. The customers have not asked us to do it. For them, that may not even have been an issue worth solving. It was an issue worth solving for us. So that's where we figured that we have to very clearly think of us as a corporate brand. The work that we do, the ethos with which we do it, is going to be driven by our principles, the mission and vision statement. But when we reach a customer, there should not be one area where that customer can point out that, we probably cut corners or something of that sort. In fact, they'd be much more brutal with social impact startups than they would with regular startups, because they say you should understand you're cheating customers in the name of social impact. So it's all the more pressure to make sure that you get it right.
That's really interesting. And I saw from your website that you have 5,000 exceptional reviews on the product. You clearly achieved your job in that respect. I think you're doing a really amazing job. I also saw that you had an endorsement from the CEO of Unilever. So it's clear that this product is really going much further than, just kind of serving a small problem in a small population. It's actually really, I think, the work that you invested in creating something exceptional at every stage has then clearly replicated itself and spread much faster. So that's really interesting. I would love to hear more about the social media side of things. You've grown a huge following on social media, and I know that a lot of the brands that are listening, but also the brands who are on Ecom Connect, they they have, online products that they want to sell, and they don't necessarily always know, how do I get that off the ground? Maybe one of the projects that I personally was involved in was in Central America, and they were all creating such beautiful handmade products. But then when it came to actually, how do we get this off the ground online and get people all over the world to become aware of what we do, that became a stumbling block. So would you like to speak to that? Was there anything that guided you in the creation and launching of those social media accounts? And
Yeah, so I can really talk all day about it, because it's been a very long journey of just learnings on social media. And since I have been very closely working with that aspect of the organization, it's something that I love also. I'm proud of as well. See, the thing is, on social media, uh, I'm just a few pointers which, if I think if they benefit the attendees. Do not cut corners in social media with respect to your content and your photography. Compare yourselves with the best of the brands and try to see those nitty-gritties. If you are uploading a product picture, please do not use a phone camera, or even if you're using a phone camera, put some efforts in editing it. You have free tools online, make it look beautiful. And with respect to content, take some efforts in trying to give some new information to the people. Because to give you an example, yesterday we had Yoga Day, International Yoga Day, which was celebrated, and every other brand in India has spoken about Yoga Day. What we did was, we did not speak about yoga as much, because everyone now knows how yoga is beneficial and so on and so forth. We spoke about an art form. So there's a publication in India which was one of the first proponents of yoga. We talked about how that publication was instrumental in making yoga mainstream. What was the art form that they utilized? That's the kind of information people go back, and they feel good about it. If I'm opening social media, I would want to know something new. Um, Keep that always in mind, that everything that you're doing on social media, you have to add on to the experience, and you do not have to take so much pressure with respect to, oh my god, how can I give new information every single day? Maybe you can't, but the photography or the content that you're, don't cut corners over there. That will actually help you so much. There's no limit to it. Do a basic audit on your website, a speed audit. How does my website perform? Does it load quickly, etc., etc.? Can I remove redundant stuff? Basic things which can go a long way. Now, apart from that, what we did, Rashina, was, at that point of time, we really didn't have the budgets to do product photography, because it really costs a lot, editing, etc., all of that. What we had was, we had access to interns from really good design colleges, because they wanted to work with us, because of the social impact. They wanted it on their resume. And we said, you know what, come on board, do illustrations for us. And we said that for almost a year, we will rely on very little product photography. We'll rely on illustrations. The only reason we did that was because it was cheap. There was no other brilliant marketing thought process behind it. It was just that it was cheap. But in that, we made sure that we would try to create nostalgia with whatever illustrations we did. So fragrance is a very sensorial product. If you were to take a whiff of a particular fragrance that you have experienced in your childhood, there's a very strong nostalgia connect that can be built. And we sort of started playing with that. The initial illustrations sort of got us a lot of engagement. Then we started using them in our advertisements as well. And that's how it really just grew. People started looking at us not as a brand which was selling incense, but as a brand which was doing really good illustrations and some nostalgia related things. And they said that, you know what, might as well follow. Because there's so much of crap content on Instagram nowadays. It's good to see something different. And that's how you said, and that really helped us. I do not want to be boastful about it. We actually benefited from the nonsense that was going on Instagram. I think we managed to get the right kind of audience. I would also suggest that if you cannot work with an agency, because agencies may be expensive. If you can't work with a digital marketing agency or an outdoor agency or something of that sort, collaborate. Ask someone who's good at it to give you 4 hours of his or her time. And you can always give something back in return and say that, you know what, this is my problem. If you can just help me with this, that 4 hour conversation will help you by leaps and bounds. That's something that we've done. We reached out to so many people and said, can you just give us some idea about this? We want to automate our XYZ process on the website, but we don't have the budget. Because of the nature of social impact, people don't look at you as a competition. They'll say, you know what, just try this, that might be helpful. So in the initial stages, that's the thing. And also when you're spending money on social media, be very clear that you want that money to translate into revenue.
Mm,
Do not fall for vanity metrics like number of likes,
yeah.
number of followers. To this day, we've never focused on the number of followers that we have. It's just something that keeps on growing. What we look at is, are people engaging with us meaningfully?
Yeah.
That's all.
That's really interesting. There are so many things from that that we could unpack. And I think, firstly, what you said about aiming high and actually taking brands that are doing something really interesting within that industry and setting your standards in the right place, I think is so, so important. And often I think when people are starting out, they feel that they don't really deserve that and that they can't reach that level. And actually it's so important to actually be aiming at that level of quality. So I think that's really interesting. The other thing which for me was striking is that you really have, from the beginning to where you are now, behaved exactly like entrepreneurs. You know, you've gone out there and asked people for help and asked other people for help and hired design students. And, you know, I think from that perspective, that's something that is just so naturally in the nature of an entrepreneur. It really is. It's interesting to see that and how actually in doing that, you developed your own visual style, which really resonated with people, that was current, that became its own source of intrigue. I think that is very special that you kind of happened upon that through being a little bit entrepreneurial and scrappy and trying to find ways of doing things with, you know, an initial limited budget. So yeah, that's really, really interesting. And I think also when it comes to social media, a lot of the time e-commerce businesses in particular get caught up on the metrics, like you said, the vanity metrics, or even just, you know, trying to do all of the right things, right? There are so many courses and products and social media coaches out there who are talking about all of the statistics. But I think, and also based on what you're saying, what really matters is actually producing things that are quality and that mean something to people and aren't just saying the same thing that's being repeated all over their feed. And I think given that your social media following at this point is pretty huge, actually, I think you really have spoken to that today. It's just the importance of going for the details and making sure that the ensemble works really well together. So that's really interesting, actually. I wanted to hear more about some of the other things that you learned, maybe not to do with packaging and social media, but other entrepreneurial lessons along that journey as you were starting out. I know that you've mentioned a couple of them, but I think it would be really interesting for people to hear some of the other things that you kind of learned along the way.
Actually, I haven't learned that aspect which I'm going to discuss. It is more of an Achilles heel for me even today, is leadership. And when you sort of, you think of leadership as, you have to take people along. There's so much of pressure and working. So what I've come to realize is that we have such biases with respect to people that we disable them from really achieving their own potential. And that's really suicidal for a startup, because you don't really have too many people who are willing to work with you in the first place. So the ones who are willing to work with you, you need to sort of go blind in with respect to trust. Of course, that has to be put in place with some checks, etc. But then I have suffered because of it, because I thought that, you know what, uh, he or she is young, there's so much of pressure on them, I'll do it myself. And you sort of set the time or the clock behind because of this behavior of yours. And I've really suffered because of it. So I'm still trying to learn from it. But again, that's like a major learning. Apart from this, again, I think bias is the anchor bias, which I did a little bit of a reading about as well. That we are so driven by, or we are so afraid of the end result that we don't really start. And that's like a major problem. The best part about being a startup is that there's only 100 people watching you. What's the worst that is going to happen? Those 100 people might think that it could have been better. And I'm talking about with respect to marketing, with respect to sales or cash flows and everything. Don't do that. Uh, but with respect to marketing, just try, just try. And the best part about social media or digital and everything is that if you get a backlash, you just delete it. HBO sent out an email, which was just a blank
Yes.
email from the intern, and they owned it.
Yeah.
Why can't startups sort of take that position? There's going to be absolutely no backlash. People would actually come ahead and say that we could do this better, etc. That's with respect to content. That's with respect to communication. That's with respect to reaching out to people for help.
Yeah.
I mean, everything. Rather than anticipating what the response might be, just try to focus on taking that first step, and then everything sort of cascades and goes ahead.
That's really
So, so
interesting.
far, those just the lessons. Apart from that, I think all of them are entrepreneurs. They have had their wonderful experiences. Not much that I can add over there.
I think this is so fascinating. And also, so what you said about leadership, thank you firstly for sharing that. I'm pleased that you felt comfortable. And I think that it's something that we all do grapple with as entrepreneurs, is how do you effectively lead a team? How do you encourage people to access their potential, give them the trust so that they feel enabled and safe, and then trying new things rather than us trying to kind of like stay in control of things or keep everything safe ourselves by not enabling people. It's a really, really interesting theme that you brought up, and it's something that I think about a lot. And I know that everyone who's an entrepreneur, it's their job really to get the most out of their team and help their team also fulfill their creative potential as kind of mini entrepreneurs as well. So yeah, that's an interesting one, and I'm glad that you're self-aware enough that you've been thinking about that and actively working on it. I think that also when you work with young people, that's the important part, right? Is that they're so full of potential and ambition and creative energy that it's so important not to be the person that quashes that, but actually helps light that fire within them, and that can take you into new places. I personally have found that in business, actually working with younger people who have that ambition can lead you to starting things that you might not have had the courage to start before, or you might not necessarily have thought was relevant. And that then snowballs into something really interesting and current that resonates with people. So really, really interesting that you said that. I also think that when it comes to trying something new, that part of things is something that initially people get really caught up on in their minds, is wanting to do everything so perfectly that they don't actually start and learn on the go. And I think that you can't really perfect something unless you get through to the next level of understanding. Okay, I've started this, now I've improved it, now I'm tweaking it, and get to that kind of upper that I guess the upper level of the quality of what you're producing. But the misconception, of course, is that things just start out and they're created and then it's perfect. So that's why I really appreciate you sharing this, actually, because when you look at your brand from the outside, it looks really amazing, and the social media following and all the endorsements that you've got and the way that you tell your story is really, really impressive. And now sitting here today and hearing that you had to try things and take risks and hire people who then ended up creating something that became its own kind of cult following within the brand, that's really valuable, because I think it does demonstrate that importance of just really taking the courage and trying things and letting them evolve into what they're meant to become. So yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that, actually. I had a couple of questions that I wanted to ask about, but I just wanted to say, so I saw on the website, and I also heard from the last conversation that we had, that you employ 73 women full time, and these are women from marginalized communities. I thought it would be really nice for you to talk a little bit more about that as well. I know you spoke about it last time with me and Christina, but I'd love for everyone else to kind of gain more awareness of what you're doing on that front.
In India, there's a very prevalent caste system. Uh, we may, people living in the metros, tier one cities may not, see it on a regular basis, but it's very much still there, even in the metros, etc. The lower castes are subjected, or they are given occupations, they can't move out of the occupations that have been earmarked for them for centuries. So manual scavenging is one of those. Manual scavenging basically is the practice of uh, collecting feces manually and then transporting it on your head into garbage pits, etc., etc. Now, that practice is not something that you'd see in the cities, but in towns like Kanpur or tier 3 cities, tier 4 city or towns, etc., it's still very much prevalent. These women are Dalit women. They are, no other community members would actually do it. It is sort of an understood thing that, you have to do this work. Two, they work in extremely hazardous conditions. There is no strong government support. While there are policies which have been framed, not many people can actually end up availing the benefits of it. And 90% of them are daily wage laborers. So they get fixed daily wages only, depending on whether they show up at work or not, etc. No health benefits, nothing of that sort. So when we started off, we knew that the temples that we collect from in the vicinity, there were people who were doing this. And we figured that, if it took us some time to even first make an incense. First, we just wanted people to collect those flowers and bring it to us. And that's where we figured that if these women could do that for us, we could probably make them a part of the organization. And we started off with 2 women only. We didn't really have very ambitious plans of employing 73 women, etc. So started off with these 2 women, and then we made sure that the process was such that the women could play a part at all parts of the entire supply chain. So be it from collecting, segregating the flowers, packaging, etc., etc. And today we are actually implementing a program with Pravaha Foundation, which is in Delhi, where we want to upskill these women from an unskilled labor to skilled or semi-skilled proficiency. So we want to actually make sure that they know how to operate a computer. The problems that they face is that basic computation on a paper is also something that they find very difficult to do. They can do the counting on fingers. That's something that they can do, but put in say 150 plus 500 and all of those, that's a bit difficult for them. And we are expanding, we are growing, we want them to grow with us. So we are sort of making sure that we want to move them from an unskilled to a skilled proficiency. And then we've actually seen leaders emerge from them as well. We've got someone called Shabana. There's a wonderful post about her on Instagram. She joined us when she was 19, supports a family of 4 people. She's doing her education side by side. So she started off as a flower separator, and now she's a supervisor having a team of 6 women under her, all of age 22 only. So we feel that there's so much that can be done with these women, and they have shown a lot of ambition. They have ambitions now for their kids. So they really sort of inspire us. We can't really, take a break because they don't allow us to do that.
That's incredible. I have so much respect for you for doing that, and just for having, I'm kind of speechless, to be honest. I mean, just putting in the possibility and the thought to support these women, and then on top of that, to encourage them to develop into leaders and to educate themselves is just incredible. And, you know, it's really nice actually when you said that it drives you. It's, I imagine that to be true, right? Because you're supporting such incredible people and that's having such a quick knock-on effect. I'm sure that that must be so inspiring to live and breathe in your daily reality as a business leader. Yeah, I'm just blown away by that. And I saw also that you'd sent 19 kids to school on the website. I saw that, and again, I just really, that literally changes lives. And so I just wanted to thank you for doing this work that you're doing, which is so important. And it's, you know, it's unexpected and came from a real problem, but you managed to actually loop in other problems and solve other problems at the same time. That's incredible. So just like, I want to kind of do like a quick round of applause for that actually, because that's just amazing. I know we have lots of other questions, but I'm just really, really happy that you were here today to share your story, because I think that, you know, the people who are part of our community, they do really inspiring work, but there's so much out there in the world of entrepreneurship to learn. And it's important that we share this information so that other people know what does it look like behind the scenes, and what are the struggles, and what are the things that you need to think about if you want to build a sustainable business that can continue to change lives, not just this time around, but also, you know, for the children of the people that are working for you, for their relatives, so that that knock-on effect can be wider and wider each time. So yeah, I think that's incredible. I also, I remember you sent me that there was a spread on the work that you were doing, and there was a video made about it. So would you like to share more about what that experience was like after all of the work that you put into this, to see that rewarded and recognized on an international scale?
Yeah, actually, that was quite surprising. We got an email from someone claiming to be from Business Insider. You know, he was commissioned by Business Insider. And we were like, why would Business Insider want to talk to us? We sort of thought that this was a prank. We said that, okay, what are your credentials? I mean, is there some official letter that you have? Because people do reach out to us that they want to see our factory, they want to meet with the women and all, and we can't really entertain everyone, right? And so we sort of said that, you know, show us something that it's really Business Insider. And then when he showed the letter and all, we were like, oh, that's huge. And we had no idea. We said, what is it that you want? We'll give you everything. They said, we'll come to your factory, we'll do a shoot. We would want to see the entire day as to how it goes. And he said, whatever is required, I mean, fine, Business Insider it is, right? So they came down and we took them to the place where we collect the flowers. We showed them the Ganga Ghat. From there on the market, then we got them to the factory. We did sort of an interview with the women, and they got all of those shots. Then they took their own sweet time in putting all together. So we later on understood that it was for Worldwide Waste Management Series. So there, in that series, they cover the top innovations across the world which are addressing waste management issues. So yeah, and then that video went viral. We've got more than 5.5 million views cumulatively so far. Of course, it's a domain of Business Insider, but Fool is grateful that they thought about us, and that just sort of goes to show that how your marketing is reaching people you didn't even anticipate it to reach. So that was our takeaway, that you keep on doing what you're doing, it reaches the right people in its own sweet time.
That's really interesting. So firstly, congratulations again for this other accolade, which is just, yeah, incredible testament to all your amazing work. And I do think that's a really interesting takeaway as well, that you focused on delivering quality, really working on something that was special, that worked for the right reasons, and that actually scaled outwards and reached people in different countries. And now even more people, 5 million is you know, not a small figure. So I just think that's incredible. Well done. I really would like to actually open up the questions. I know there are lots of people listening who probably are bursting with questions to ask. So I see someone's already unmuted themselves. So I think we should take a moment to do that. Yes, Maheshwar, go for it.
Hello, first of all, very good evening to all, and good afternoon to Jenny and Chris. Rashina, very good afternoon. I don't know which time you stay, so it's a very good afternoon to you as well. And our host, Mr. Afru from Full. It's quite interesting, and I really appreciate the entire Full team for contributing society to for making this handmade products. I believe it is completely handmade products. Apur, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have three questions for you. First thing, could you please throw some more light on the process? Okay, whether it's your products are completely handmade or is there any machine involved? First thing. And second thing, what are the initial challenges at the start of your journey? As you said, initially you were working with NGOs, right? You didn't have any budget. Okay, so how you cope with the challenges in terms of marketing? Okay, so as an entrepreneur, we are SME company. Okay, so we also would like to learn about it. And third things, how you are different from other manufacturers, like instance stick manufacturers, because you have a lot of competition from southern India. So how you differentiate with them? Thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me? All right.
Yes, sure.
Okay. So to address your first question, yes, our products are handmade. So there are parts of the process in which we have to use machines. In the sense that when the flowers come into the system and when after the segregation is done, they go through drying. So we do natural sunlight drying. Post that we have to put them in an industry grade dryer because these flowers also have pesticides, etc., thrown onto them. That industry grade dryer helps us sort of remove all of those effects. Post that we make them into a fine powder. For that, we because of the level of flowers that are coming into the system, we now have to use machines. The third thing, we make a dough out of it. After the dough is made, we roll it onto the stick. Now, for the stick, it is possible to do it by hand, but for the cone, we have to use I don't know what it's called. We use molds because getting the same standard, thing for cones is not possible with the hands. And in future, we are thinking of automating at least 40% of this process because as the number of flowers that we pick up, or we are actually in talks with 3 more temple towns of the country. So the intake is going to be much higher. In that case, we would want to keep say 40-50% automated and have more women being able to moving into supervisory roles and see where can the employment opportunities arise. That is the first. The second question was in the initial stages, we didn't work with NGOs, we worked with very few people. We didn't have too many people, to start off with. I think your question is more directed towards the funding part of it, as to how do you manage cash flows, etc. With that aspect, we made sure that we
I mean,
went to
not for funding, it's for
yeah.
marketing. So you didn't have any budget.
Okay, so yeah. So for the budget itself, we made sure that we went to every competition that there was there. Any competition that gave you even 10 rupees, we would go over there just in the hope that we want to win that competition. And our main aim was that any competition that comes across, and if we are a fit for it, we have to go and win it. It can be selfish. That's all right, but we needed the money. There's no two ways about it. We needed the money. And the third, the most important aspect of it is that every penny that we were spending in marketing, we attached it with revenue. We said that, okay, fine, if I'm spending, say, 10,000 rupees today on a packaging, it has to come back to me in revenue. It cannot go into a place where it's not going to come back. So you do it once, you do it right. With social media marketing also, you can spend 1,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees on Facebook and you'll never see money coming back. So in that aspect, the collaboration bit that I said, work with someone who's really good at it, pay that person for the timing, maybe even for a day. But that person in one day will do so much better work than what you would probably, get with a substandard person who doesn't know his or her shit. The third question, how are we different? We don't use charcoal in our products. We don't use artificial perfumes or synthetic perfumes, etc. And a very important aspect is we do not target the same people that these incense manufacturers are targeting. So our audience is not someone who can buy 40, 50 rupees incense. Our audience is firmly the upper middle class or the middle class of the country. A minority, I would say, but we focus on them only because we cannot play the game for, we can't cater to everyone's needs. So that concentrated effort has really helped us because we can't compete with the ones who have been doing it for 40 years. It's just not possible.
That's a good strategy. Thank you.
Do we have any more questions? Okay, if anyone has a question, please feel free to unmute yourselves. No more questions. I mean, we are ending in a couple of minutes. So now is your last chance. We can wait a little bit if anyone can think of a question, but otherwise we might have to wrap up. Jen, do you have a question?
It's not a question, but I just want to say that I'm just really impressed and inspired by the work that you guys are doing and the type of leadership that you are embodying in the company. I think it's amazing. And I love the creativity behind all of your approaches, like even from when you were saying that, people don't care so much about like social impact and stuff like that. But I love how, you presented it in a way that, the work that you guys are doing is caring for a very sacred river in India that people really love and enjoy and use regularly. So yeah, I just think that this was a really, really powerful session, and it was really nice to get to know the business and everything behind it. So
Thank you, Jennifer.
Okay, since we don't have any more questions, I think it's time that we wrap up. So I would just say, firstly, to Apoorv, thank you for creating this business. I'm sure that you already get a lot of thank yous from the people that you're employing, from the kids that you're helping send to school, from all of the people who are buying your products. But seriously, thank you, because I've been blown away like throughout this chat by how much thought you've put into every single part of the process, how much like entrepreneurial gumption you've shown as well. And it's incredible. So thank you for that. And also thank you for showing up today and sharing your story with these entrepreneurs. I know that it's much appreciated, and some of the messages that we've got in the chat actually just go to show how much people have appreciated hearing your perspective and your story. So thank you for being here. I would like to encourage everyone to go and follow Fooled and to stay in touch and just keep following the initiatives that they're working on. I think they're doing such incredible work, and anything that we can do to support would be great. And also, if anyone can think of questions afterwards that they forgot during the course of this interview, then feel free to send them on afterwards and we'll get in touch with Apoorv. Worker is saying, thank you so much for such a noble venture and giving the women who work for you such dignity. And Maheshwar would like to connect with you. So please, number.
Yeah, I'll just drop in my number, Maheshwar.
yeah.
Thank you, Apoorv.
No problem.
Before everyone runs out, we just have a quick poll that we need everyone to it's like couple of questions, like super quick, if you guys don't mind. So I'm just going to launch the poll while we just kind of finish up here. So you can just go ahead and answer those couple of questions. And I also popped in the chat the link to Fool's Instagram, and I also popped in the link to a video that's on their website that kind of shows the process of like how they create their products. And it's just a really, really inspiring video. So that's in the chat as well. And we will be sharing the recording and any links and resources in Ecom Connect on the newsfeed after the session. So you'll be able to grab all that there as well.
Perfect. Right, we have a couple of minutes left. So if anyone has any last minute questions, feel free. Otherwise, please continue with the poll. But yeah, I just really wanted to reiterate, thank you so much, Apoorv. I personally have learned a lot from this session, and I think some of the things that you've talked about so easily and so naturally actually don't come naturally to many people. And for me, just hearing about how relentless you were about thinking about, okay, what do the people need? How can we make this work on a strategic and financial level and a commercial level? Just all of the thought processes that go behind creating the brand that you've created, which is so valuable to hear about. So yeah, I personally have had a huge amount of takeaways from the session. Just really grateful that you were so candid with us. And yeah, I'm sure that it's the same with all of the people who are listening. So I think that we should end now. Maybe I'll give everyone a minute to do the poll. But do you want to share any final words on where we can find you and anything that you would like to share just with the entrepreneurs who are listening?
No. I think thank you for the opportunity. And lovely talking to you guys. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to help with any perspective that I can add. My LinkedIn, is open, and I've also dropped in my number. If you ever need anything, you have my email ID as well.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate this. And I'm sure that lots of people will be flooding into your LinkedIn inbox now after this session. Thank you so much. I'm going to end this meeting, everyone, but
Yes.
thank you again, Apoorv. This has been amazing. And the link will be available on Ecom Connect afterwards if anyone wants to listen back and take notes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rashina. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, everyone.
You're
Bye-bye.
so welcome.
Bye, everyone.